Forbes India and Exotel present Architects of CX, the untold stories.
Hello and welcome to this very special conversation. I'm Ridu Bhandari. In just a few weeks, we are excited to see the launch of the book Architects of CX at EngageX 2026 in Mumbai. This inspiring book shares the stories of leaders from India, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. These leaders made bold, transformative decisions about how their organizations connect with customers. Structural bets made under resistance that truly shaped their businesses. The book is co-published by Forbes India and Exotel, and it is anchored in a single crucial question: what does it actually take to redesign how customers experience an enterprise? To deep dive into this, we are joined today by someone who co-founded one of India's first contact center platforms over 2 decades ago, merged it with Exotel to build the largest customer engagement platform in emerging markets, and has since been in the room when many of the leaders featured in this book made their most consequential decisions. Sachin Bhatia, co-founder and Chief Growth Officer of Exotel, it's a pleasure to have you with us here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mridhu. Very excited to be here.
Equally excited about this conversation and the launch of the book that we are talking about today. Let me first rewind a little bit to over 2 decades ago, 2003, when you co-founded Ameo. Now that was a time when the world was really transitioning from PBX systems to contact center applications, and back then Gartner classified the entire space as contact center infrastructure, which included things like keyboards and mobile phone infrastructure. Take us back to that time. What made you and your co-founders think that here's a space we'd like to build something in?
Yeah, I think we have come a very, very long way. So when we graduated out of IIT, all communication was proprietary infrastructure, what you called as PBXs. And all communication infrastructure was looked at like plumbing. It is infrastructure. How you buy a computer or a tap, you used to buy PBXs. But the applications that were coming in, so when I used to talk to a customer at that time, they will talk about dialers, headsets, phones, and that's it. But slowly this became core workflow to the customer care. And today, so I call it from basement to boardroom strategy, or from basements to actually something that can matter to the top line and the bottom line, right? So customer experience, I think, is the last frontier. At that time, we felt that if everything can be done in software, there'll be huge advantages and flexibilities that would come out. We were all software engineers, young, excited. We thought it is possible, and we ended up building it.
And if you think back to the mindset that you had at that time, did you think that you're building a technology company, or did you already sense that communication itself would become a critical piece going forward and that would become a boardroom level strategic function?
Hindsight is 2020, Mridhu. When at that time we were taking one step at a time, we were thinking, what is a large enough problem that exists today, which probably has a runway for another 10, 15 years? And do we have the capability to solve it? That is all we had in mind. We were a bootstrap company at that point of time. But I think as we progressed, the boardroom strategies around customer experience and the customer experience itself became critical to businesses. And today, I think it's the second most talked topic. The first is engineering using AI.
Absolutely. Well, and it's been an interesting shift of the world since then. And we're going to come to AI and the intersection of AI and customer experience as well. But you gave a talk a few years ago where you compared CIOs experimenting with AI to children playing with fidget spinners. And you said no real business reason there, just something that, CXOs want to talk about with peers. Perhaps that's where AI is right now. Now, clearly, the world has shifted since then. Things have changed. We are not there anymore. When did you realize the change personally? And when did AI move from a CIO's side experiment or a side hustle to actually now driving boardroom imperatives?
So this was, I think, 5, 6 years back, if I remember, a room full of CIOs, mostly from banks. and I was supposed to give a talk there, and I had young children at home. And I observed them. At that time, there was this very popular toy called a fidget spinner. And I went up to my son and said, "Why are you playing with it?" And he said, "I don't know why. It's just fun." And I was about to write something for that deck, and I said, this is a great example, because every time I go into a CIO room conversation and I ask them, so they would say that, what do you have in AI? And I would say, but why do you want anything in AI? And they would not have a good answer. From that to, so, by the way, all innovation starts like that. It's okay that people experiment. For example, today I'm playing with Claude. Yeah. It could be without an objective, but I'm playing with it. But once you develop a little bit of comfort with a new technology, then slowly you start realizing what use cases it matters for. I think last quarter, Bajaj Finance, Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj himself, released some stats about how much business impact is now AI doing for the Bajaj Group. So I think from an innovation discussion, it has become like a balance sheet strategy. The boards realize that if they're not acting now, they could be left behind. Now, whether their direction is improving customer experience or reducing cost to service is still an organizational decision. But this technology is now mature enough, and I think all this transition in 2022, 23, with LLMs becoming really, really powerful, and all, you and I using it in our daily lives, and there's no looking back now. Like, you can still decide the strategy that you want better experience, reduce cost to service, but there is no way that any organization today can ignore AI. And I think 22, 23 would be that time frame when this happened. Right. So when I look back, that joke, I think now everybody knows the why of using this, which I think is fabulous.
So they know why they are spinning the fidget.
Yeah, the why is the important part, right?
Right.
The how can be figured out.
Yeah. Well, a lot of enterprises rushed into AI and experimenting with it over the last 12 to 18 months. From what you've observed, at this point, what separates organizations from, the ones who are actually redesigning workflows using AI and seeing benefits versus those who are simply layering on AI onto some broken processes?
So I think you have to look at it outside in and not inside out. I think Steve Jobs used to say that all customer experiences should be thought from the customer's point of view. So let's say you and I are designing customer experience for a bank, and we would have experienced it multiple times. How much do you like the press 1, press 2, sales, service, and then being told that your call is very important, right? So I think if you work from outside in, if you focus on the customer experience, you first reduce the wait time. And I think that's a very low-hanging fruit, right? Why do I need to press anything? You just ask me that, what do I want? I want to block my card, I want to open a new account, and the AI is now smart enough to understand. The second, and I think all of us who have been users of credit card would have experienced it. Month end, you get this SMS, right? Here is your outstanding, ignore if already paid. That's so rude. Why don't you already know that I have paid or not, exactly, right? Yeah. So me and Shipku, we used to talk about how is it that you talk to your friends only once in a year and you still click like this, even after years of college or years of school, but you call an organization in the afternoon and then you call them next morning and you appear like complete strangers. So I think use of AI in those, building some context, building the memory. The customer, of course, remembers. Can you also remember? I think those are some of the areas where we are seeing real innovation happening. So reduce effort of the customer, reduce the wait time. Can I understand you better? Can I cut through the noise and already know that you are here for this? You had already told us this, so hence you could be talking to us about this. I think those are some of the things which are low-hanging fruit. Then there is personalization. Then there is scale, which are next layer. But organizations who are using it well are very clear about what problem they want to solve. And then they find a solution using AI.
What happens when an enterprise genuinely really addresses that disconnect that you just talked about? Because you need to then start viewing the customer as a whole across all touch points that your company has with the customer. Those could be physical, those could be digital.
Sure.
And there seems to be a clear disconnect. You know, a lot of brands will have a completely different physical store and a completely different digital store. Inventory is different,
Sure.
the whole customer journey is different. How do you then bridge that gap and make it very, very seamless for the customer?
So it is extremely important that you don't get overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. I think my favorite kind of initiatives are where you take one step or one process. Let me give you the simplest example that I can think of. I just talked about an IVR, right? I think all IVRs in the world should be removed right away. And there should be a voice which asks you, what do you want? And then direct you to the right human being. This is a problem that can be solved today. All the effort in the press 1, press 2, press 9, 000 going to a human can completely go away, right? So I think as human beings, we usually overestimate what is possible in short term and underestimate what is possible in long run, right? So when I go and talk to some of the enterprises, they say, I want to completely automate. And I say, like, hold on, your customer experience is a very, very difficult thing to touch. Customer behavior itself, do you know that humans don't trust bots today? So if the customer is frustrated, you don't want a bot to come in, right? So I think we have to then tell them, take the first step, automate a part of it, and then take smaller steps to automate continuously. So it's not a one night, overnight kind of automation. It's usually step by step. You reach to 30%, 40%, 50%, 60% automation. That's the right way to approach it rather than, as you said, across all channels, right? So take one channel and then slowly give customer the trust that, yeah, the machine can solve it for you, or at least collect the information better.
Right. Okay, so let's shift gears now and talk about the book. Forbes India and Exotel are presenting Architects of CX, The Untold Stories. Now, you've been in the room with many of them. You've had the conversations with them. You know, you've seen what they asked for, what your team thought was possible, and, you know, where leaders really pushed you to sort of visualize with them and deliver for them. So what do the ones in this book particularly have that's different, and perhaps, you know, what stood out for you in some of these conversations?
Yeah, I'll relate this question to a parenting question. So what do you think are the skills of future if AI is so pervasive? So what should we give our kids? I always believe curiosity and belief are the two skills that would last. And the leaders that you have mentioned, I remember Sumed, Anand, team from Blue Dart. These two things were very, very consistent across them. The first is they would challenge the status quo. So for example, age-old stat in contact center has been, we are doing good if 80% of the calls are handled in 20 seconds. But that's a very operational metric. That doesn't talk about the effort you and I are putting to reach the human being. So I think most of these CX leaders, the first thing that I observed is they were willing to challenge whatever, which means there is no standard today. Everything can be broken, everything can be questioned, which leads to uncomfortable conversations, because then where do you start? And the second was a belief that everything is possible. When things are getting disrupted, there are no standards, right? When somebody would have broken the 10-second milestone on a 100-meter race, that's basically nobody would have thought about it, right? I think it's that kind of moment in CX where people are challenging us, people are imagining things that a decade ago people would have said that this is just not possible, right? So I'll give you one small example. This was an aggregator in Gulf. They are part of the Architects of CX list. I think Sumed was the guy that we had a conversation with. And he said that, can we aim for 95% automation? And my team just said that, like, this is unheard of, 95% is not possible. And we almost gave up on that requirement. And then I went up to Sumedha and said, I want to have a one-on-one conversation. Where did this number 95% come in your mind? I've myself researched, I think 60% is a stretch. And he said, Sachin, if we shoot for the stars, we'll land on the moon. And I said, dude, like, my team is looking at your requirements very seriously. I know what you mean, but okay, let me push it. We were thinking 30, 40%, but we got to 60, 65%, right? So because there are no standards, I think people who are pushing what they're aiming for and then landing better than what everybody else is aiming for are the people who are breaking through these barriers. And the second is they really believe that it is possible. Like they would find, they would push people, they would find methods that, so most of the leaders, I've spoken to them personally, very, very curious, challenging status quo and believe that everything is possible. Those are the two traits that stand out for me.
Wonderful. And was there ever a moment where, you know, a customer's ambition genuinely forced Exotel to rethink its own roadmap and accelerate capabilities faster?
Every day.
Give us some examples.
We talked about Americana, Blue Dart, for example. Blue Dart is a very ambitious team. We earlier thought that they're a traditional company, but their aspiration is to be world class. There should be no waiting for the customer. Can we address it right away, not after 2 months, not after 3 months? There are banks like IndusInd which are doing really well. Muthoot is doing really well. Manappuram is doing really well. These are all companies that you think of as traditional companies, but their leaders are really, really pushing hard to sort of be in the forefront because the race is starting from scratch for everyone.
Yeah.
So people who push now are the ones who I think going to lead the race.
You know, talking about markets other than India, there are quite a few markets that get covered in this book. India, the Gulf, Southeast Asia, Africa. Now, when you enter into a conversation with someone, let's say in Dubai, versus someone in Mumbai, how different is that conversation around customer experience? And, you know, fundamentally, is there something that changes, or fundamentally we are all looking to delight our customers and you know that's what companies are working with?
So let's talk about Gulf and India. I think the macro is very, very different. India is first of all not one market. I think there was a research report which said India 1, India 2. India 1 behaves like Gulf and India 2, let's say, behaves like Africa. India is still an acquisition market. So underpenetrated in banking, credit cards, automobile, financial products. So a lot of focus in India is on acquisition of new customers. Whereas Gulf, for example, is a supremely saturated market. Like everybody has all these services and the brands there are focused on, can I retain customers better? Can I continue to delight them so that they don't consider leaving me for another brand? So I think India 1 behaves like Gulf. But the Mumbai that you talked about mostly is an acquisition market. So can I acquire you fast? Can I service you fast is what happens in India. And can I be hyper-personalized? Can I make sure that in a closed room, you would talk nice about my brand would be Gulf. I think those would be the contrast. And then Africa, I think, again, is like India too. But I think Africa will leapfrog all of us in customer experience. I don't know if you know this or not, but mobile money, Africa penetration is the highest.
Highest, yeah.
Right? And they just completely leapfrog whatever banking products. So I think I'm very, very bullish that in next 5 to 10 years, Africa, the way they'll think about CX would be probably the new way that all of us have not thought about.
Now, if we were to publish another edition of Architects of CX, let's say 3 years from now in 2029, what do you think the architects of that edition would have done differently from the ones today, and any decisions that you think seem very bold today but will be pretty obvious ones by then?
So today we are celebrating people who thought with curiosity what is possible and with belief made it happen. I think the future leaders of CX would be who can tie this with human empathy. So you went from human empathy to automation. We talk about a platform called Harmony. I'm wearing a Harmony logo here, but we think the future of CX is if you can blend in human and AI very naturally for an end customer. So for example, AI is a great tool for collecting information, and then it will have a memory that remembers what Sachin has done in the past, and then pass on that information very nicely to a human being and get it solved. So I think the leader of the future is somebody who can blend these two really well and not saying, I'm either standing for this or this. Can you blend these two and take bolder bets? What would be table stake in future? Your first line of defense has to be AI, and your last line of defense has to be humans. I think that will become table stake in future.
All right. Well, you described a personal moment recently where you said that, someone you trusted deeply challenged you and said that you've gotten too comfortable with where you are. Now, and you said your first instinct was to go online and start looking for inspiration because, obviously someone very close to you has said that you're getting too comfortable. Tell us more about that entire thought process that followed. And when you imagine any CXO picking up this book, at EngageX or beyond, what is the feeling that you want them to have from it?
So this was an incident where I was chatting with our CEO and the numbers were really good. And he said, Sachin, I'm not sure if you are the CRO of future for Exotel. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm hitting it out of the park. And he said, I think you're too comfortable. Do you know what the future CRO or how the CROs of future would behave? And I didn't have an answer to that question. I said, I'll come to you after a few weeks. Let me ponder on this. And then I started looking for what are the other CROs in the world doing with AI, which is a very natural thing. Like today, let's say if I say in mass communication how AI, you would also see that what other people are doing. You would want to know, right? And that was the aha moment for me. I was reflecting and said, if I think that I am, let's say, in the top 1 percentile, if I want to be in the top 1 percentile, why am I looking for inspiration outside? Why am I not able to think this new shift that would come, how would it impact my function? That's it. That was a click in my head. And I think after that, I constantly have been thinking that what is my job and can AI help me or not? Right? Rather than looking for inspiration outside and then talking about those stories outside. I think this is what this book is going to do. The leaders that we have covered, which I think are the first batch of architects of CX, if I may call it, they're going to set that this is how you think about it. And a lot of new CX leaders are going to be inspired to say, can I now think beyond what has been covered here and say where CX would go with AI and not look for inspiration from outside. I think that's this should inspire you, but this should not give you a formula. So in today's world, the formulas are out, the beliefs are out, the numbers are out, the stats are out. Can you now break through? That's how I thought about it. That's how I would encourage my kids to think about it. That's how I would think the future leaders will think about it. Everybody has to be super curious about how is my role changing for the future and would I be the one or somebody else?
So have you got an answer to that? How is your role changing for the future?
I have been at it and I've been writing about it. I think my being an engineer and a CRO really helps because I can now develop a lot of tools. But yeah, all my reviews are now, I have an assistant which is fully trained on how I work. And this is all 4 weeks of work. So
AI assistant.
It's just a beginning. And I think it'll go a very, very long way.
All right. And finally, one thing that you think leaders should stop doing today, architects of customer experience should stop doing today.
First of all, they should stop doubting that a change is coming. Shivku says, jump on the bus. I think everybody should jump on the bus and see where it goes. And the second thing which I said, that human beings usually overestimate what's possible in short term. It'll not happen overnight. You still have to build it step by step. AI is not an answer to everything yet. So you take first step and then build on it. It's not a magic wand that will solve everything for you. I think those are the 2 things I'll advise the leaders.
All right, Sachin, absolutely wonderful talking to you here today. Thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, that was Sachin Bhatia, co-founder and chief growth officer of Exotel. The stories he's describing are the ones you're about to read. 12 leaders, 5 forces reshaping customer experience, and the decisions that define their careers. Watch out for Architects of CX, a co-publication by Forbes India and Exotel, launching at EngageX 2026 in Mumbai. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Forbes India and Exotel present Architects of CX, the untold stories.